Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Dr. Gene Hess's and the Secret Handshake's Parents Informational Roundtable. Very happy to be here to answer your questions about autism, your children, IEPs, and more or less everything in between. As always, Dr. Gene Hess is here to answer your questions live or send in ahead of time, and so we are very happy to have her here, have you here, and hopefully provide answers to the questions that you are having. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and talk a little bit through introductions. Dr. Jean is going to talk about herself, her background, and more importantly, her special person. We're going to answer some questions and then talk about what next steps everyone can take, provided you are needing that assistance or providing that you are still needing answers or just need additional resources. So with that, Dr. Jean, I want to go ahead and pass it over to you.
Wow, there we are. So I'm Dr. Gene Hess, and my doctorate is in special education, and here's a little bit about me. So a very long time ago, I decided that I was going to be a teacher, so I taught K-12 for a while, and my primary area of focus was kids with behavioral needs. And so I talked with families who had all sorts of stuff going on in their homes, all sorts of stuff going on with their children or their grandchildren or their neighbors. And then I was blessed with one of my own. This is my son, Alex. Alex is now 25 and a half. And so the picture that you see on the left, we got matching haircuts because we could. So that's us being super happy that we have matching haircuts. And Alex really likes musicals. And we have a local theater here in town that does amazing musicals. And so we went to Dreamgirls. They're in their 12th season. Thomas, we are about to be able to say that we will have seen 48 musicals by the end of this season.
Oh, so, wow.
That's pretty cool, awesome. I think. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
So then I figured, I might just as well teach other people how to interact with children who have special needs. And so that's what I do. Dr. Jean is also a college professor and a parent advocate. And I've been doing this my entire adult life. It's a deep passion. And so I'm happy to give back to families and others who have a special person in their life.
So Dr. Jean, I love that the name of the organization is called the Secret Handshake, because you talk about that a lot, and you talk about, and I've seen you in action with other parents, and you talk specifically about that lifestyle, that culture of the Secret Handshake. Can you share a little bit about your history with having to be the parent or getting to be the parent that also gets to participate in that secret handshake and knowing what it's like from a firsthand perspective, some of the questions and issues and challenges some of the parents are facing here today?
I do. So, the doctor in front of Dr. Jean doesn't take the emotion out of having a child with special needs, and being the mom of a child with special needs who happens to also wear the hat of a doctor doesn't mean I'm any less a parent. And so it doesn't mean that I don't get frustrated, and it doesn't mean that there are times I don't know what to do, and it doesn't mean that every single one of my IEP meetings went off without a hitch and that everybody agreed with me all the time or I agreed with them all the time. And so the same kinds of issues that every other parent of a child with special needs goes through, I go through too. However, I also know that the path that I walk is my path with my special person. And I have learned over time that everybody's path is different. So whenever I meet a parent and they see that there's a doctor in front of my name, I remind them that just because there's a doctor in front of my name doesn't mean that I don't know the secret handshake of being a parent with a child with autism. And that really helps them sort of relax into, oh, you're one of us. So not always one of them. I can be one of them because I am an expert in what I do, but I'm also a family in crisis. So I understand that a lot.
Beautiful. I love that the fact that you share your experience and share your story. So here's what we want to do. For those of you who are just joining us, would love to have you either type in your question into the chat box if you feel comfortable doing so. Otherwise, you're also able to come live. You can unmute yourself. Tell us who your special person is and what question you have for Dr. Jean about your child or what challenge you're facing that you'd like some additional information with. We have a number of people on the call here, so we'll go ahead and start taking those. We also have some questions that were submitted earlier, and we'll get to those in just a little bit. But for those of you who are here, I think it's Myra Gomez. If you would like to come live, tell us who your special person is and what question you have for Dr. Jean. The floor is yours at the moment.
Hello, my name is Myra Gomez. My son's 8 years old. He's a third grader. He has ADHD. He has an IEP. But every time he can't focus and stuff like that, they usually take him out of the classroom and place him somewhere else. And he's behind grade level. So I feel that's not the correct thing to do because he's getting more behind. So I wanted to see how can I approach the school regarding that.
That's a fantastic question, Myra. Thank you so much for being here. And boy, I can absolutely feel you in that. And it's so very frustrating when the school makes decisions that don't really make any educational sense at all. So thank you for being here and thank you for being the advocate for your son. What's his name, please?
Ivan Avila, third grader.
Awesome. So I would say the very first thing is, what does it say in the IEP is supposed to happen when he gets distracted and he's unable to focus on work? That's the first thing. If there isn't something in the IEP, then let's work on making sure that there is something in the IEP that will tell educators everywhere how to interact with him when he's distracted. And here's why. The IEP is a legal document. And so if there are accommodations or modifications that are written into the IEP, they're supposed to be followed because that's what the law says. The law says that if it's written in as an accommodation, then that's what teachers need to do. So my question to you, Myra, is there anything written into your son's IEP that says this is what they should do when he is distracted?
I believe it's like they gave him like a special cushion when to sit down. And also I believe like if he gets distracted, they give him like a 5-minute break. But I noticed that my son keeps telling me that they put him outside the school, outside the classroom or to another classroom. And I'm like, I don't think they should be doing that because he's already behind grade level and him being removed is gonna get him more behind. And also 3 weeks ago, his regular teacher was not there. And I believe he was being disruptive and the substitute grabbed him and put him in another chair and bruised his back. I guess when he gripped him through the back, he put his marks on my son's back. And I went to do a complaint with the special education department for the school, and they're investigating the case. And it's been almost 3 weeks, and I still haven't got an answer what happened.
So I'm hearing two issues. One is that there may be something that either is or isn't really clear on the IEP about how to help your son when he is distracted or disruptive, and that you now have an investigation going on because your son was bruised. So here's my first question about the second incident. So when your son came home and he had a bruise on his back, did you take a picture of that so that
I took a picture of it, and also that day he had a appointment with a psychiatrist for the ADHD, and she also saw it, and she recommended me to do a police report.
And so did you do that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right, that's good. So I'm glad that you had some solid advice from someone in the school system. That's nice, don't you think? So
it was a psychiatrist I saw outside the school.
Oh, well, all right. Beautiful. There's a professional somewhere.
And also the next following day, they took him out of the classroom and they inspected my child. But I don't know if they were supposed to ask me to check his body or that was like school policy. I'm waiting for an answer for that.
I think that depends on the local district. I wouldn't, that's outside special education. So I'm
Okay.
not certain about that. Anything that I would say would be just a guess, and that doesn't feel like the greatest thing to do in this
Okay.
situation. But I think the fact that you took a picture and that someone advised you to go ahead and make sure that the police knew that somebody had been rough with your child,
Yes.
those were two good things. I'm not sure how long the investigation at the school level would take. Again, that's outside special education, so I'm not an expert in those kinds of things. And I'm not really sure who to recommend you to that. I would say that potentially someone at the district level inside special education should be able to give you some idea of how long they think that investigation would take. But I'm not certain of that.
Okay.
So I'm wondering too, so allowing your son to take a break when he is feeling agitated or restless or distracted is really a super idea. I also think that is he allowed to have fidgets? Are there things that he can do that I'm asking because I have had students that do all sorts of things with their pens. I had one who had these very elaborate things that he would do with a pen with his hands. And he was listening all the time. It looked like he was distracted, but he wasn't. He would also do Sudoku puzzles and be totally on task as far as listening to what was going on in the environment. So I'm wondering if it's possible that there could be something added to your son's IEP that talks about having some sensory input while he's learning, and that sensory input would help sort of calm him in ways that would allow him to stay attentive. What is your thought about that? Is that something
that's
that
good.
might help him?
Yeah, I'll bring it up. That's a good idea.
So what does he do at home when he's feeling distracted or
Oh,
disruptive?
he just keeps getting up from the chair, like opening the doors, getting up. Like it's hard for him to stay still, you know.
Oh yeah, if he has
The
ADHD.
pencil, he keeps slamming it. He just keeps looking at the door. I don't know. He has something with the doors. He likes to slam the door. Also at school, a teacher complains to me about him that he just likes to slam the door. When they open the door, he likes to look at the door. He's like something about the doors that he can't focus when the doors keeps opening, you know?
That seems like it might be a different issue, but I want to stick with what I just heard you said about one of the strategies that he uses at home to deal with his own ADHD. So I assume he knows he has ADHD. That's a conversation that you've had with him?
Yeah.
Awesome. And you said he's 8, almost 9?
Yes.
All right. So developmentally, this is happening. So that stage from moving from 8 to 9 is super important because he's going to move from concrete operations where it's really black and white to abstract operations where he can begin to think in more abstract thoughts. And so one of the things that I hear you saying is when he is feeling distracted, that he stands up and he walks. So I've also had students who have it written in their IEP that they can go to the back of the room where they're not a distraction to people who are facing forward and attending to the teacher. They come to the back of the classroom and they walk back and forth in the back of the classroom. So they're not removed from the material that's being taught for class, but they're in the back. So that would be another possible suggestion for you.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you.
And I think that if he's removed from the classroom, then it should only be for like 2 or 3 minutes. So he could be out and in the hallway. I've done this with students too, who happen to be ADD or ADHD, is I stand in the doorway or another adult, because I taught in classrooms that usually had more than one adult, would stand in the doorway and the student would walk down to the end of the hallway and walk back twice and then come back into the classroom. So it takes 30, 45 seconds. And then they're back in class, they're back in their seat, and they're back to interacting with the instruction. So those are 3 ideas. Does that help you, Myra?
Yes, thank you very much.
I am so glad that you're here. And if you think of something else while we're talking to Jasmine, then I would be happy to help you more.
Okay, thank you.
That would be great. Again, thanks for being here. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Myra. Thank you for your question and sharing with us. Appreciate that. Dr. Jean, before we head up to Jasmine, I just want to follow up one point because it's something that's kind of consistent. It feels like a lot of the time there's this adversarial relationship between the parents And the school, in terms of if something's not being met on the IEP, the parents are reluctant to communicate or bring up because of that perceived relationship. What are some strategies or tips that you have parents do that might be feeling like they are not able to communicate or just aware of that power dynamic, if that makes sense?
It absolutely makes sense. So one of the things that I talk about with parents is that it is super important. And one of the hardest things that we have to do as parents who are frustrated, and I know this firsthand because I am very often a frustrated parent, you have to leave the emotion at the door. So when you're talking to people about a conflict or something that's making you unhappy, stick to the facts. So I hear that Myra is upset that her son is being removed from the classroom. So when Myra goes and talks to the people who are in her school for her son, then Myra needs to start with, I understand that this is what you're doing. I'm coming here to talk to you about a concern that I have, and leave all of that angry voice at the door and all of that, I'm really not a happy mom at all, at the door, and have the conversation. Let's talk about what we might do instead. And is it possible to have these things added to my son's IEP? And she has every right to ask for another IEP meeting. And the way that we do that as parents is we call the principal of the school, not a special education teacher, not a special education coordinator or case manager, but the principal of the school. And we say, I would like to have a meeting about my child, my son, my daughter, whatever. And when they ask you why, you say, I have some concerns about the IEP. You don't really have to say anything more than that. You simply need to say, I would like to have an IEP meeting. According to the law, the IDEA, the Individual Individual Disabilities Education Act, that says that from the time you say, I would like to have a meeting to the time the meeting happens is 10 days, 10 business days. But the school has to schedule a meeting. There are certain people that have to be there. So it takes time sometimes to find that time to get those people there. But you can have an IEP meeting anytime you as a parent feel you need to have an IEP meeting. And so there are lots of schools that try to make parents feel like it's an annual review. There is an annual review, but from the one date and this calendar year to this date and the next calendar year is a really long time not to touch base about what's going on with our children with special needs. And so it's our right as parents to have those meetings, and it's our right as parents to ask why they're doing the things that they are, as long as we make sure that we stay calm and respectful and we leave all of that negativity that we feel because this is our baby. Oh my goodness, I've been called Mama Lion, I've been called Mama Bear, doesn't matter. All of those things, all of those feelings are there. But if our child is going to be in a district from the age of 2 or 3 to the age of 22, having an adversarial relationship for that long is really detrimental to you as a parent and to your child. And so one of the things that I really advocate for parents is to make sure that we, because I am a parent too, we leave our emotions over here. We have the conversation. And if we're still feeling emotion when we leave, then we call our best friend or we go have coffee and we spew there. We don't leave it in the school where it's going to potentially damage the relationship that our children have with others in the school.
So really say that, something along the lines of, looking for solutions that help everyone versus that adversarial thing of you're doing this to my
instead of finger waggling and saying, I don't like what you're doing. How are you going to fix it? Right. Because I don't like it when people say that to me. And so going in with that kind of, I'm really ticked off at you. What are you going to do about it? But rather go in with, I've noticed this is happening. I would like to know how we can do this differently. What can we do so that my son has more instructional time? And that's super important.
Perfect. Thank you. I wanted to make sure we speak to that because it's definitely been a recurring theme on these parent informational roundtables that we do host every month. We do have some more people who've joined us. So Jasmine, if you would like, you are more than welcome to Come live. Let us know who your special person is and what question or challenge you're facing you'd like more information about.
And just as she's unmuting, I want to address Myra's comment. Myra, I see that you have a principle that may be part of the problem, not part of the solution. And so when I'm finished talking to Jasmine, if you can hang out and we can talk about that just a little bit more, then I may be able to advise on that one too. So
Thank you.
thank you.
So Jasmine, if you're available, would love to have you come live and or type your comment or question into the chat box there. We do have some additional, oh, there she is.
Hello.
Hello,
Hey Jasmine, how are we
Jasmine.
doing today?
Oh yes, hello. How are you guys?
Good.
I'm trying to figure this thing out. Anywho, I'm Jasmine. I have two children that are actually they have IEPs. They're my special people. A boy and a girl. So I'm basically just here to, because I've been through the IEP process and everything, but I'm basically here to get information about, like maybe some more related services or things that can be added onto their IEP. So I'm kind of like just listening, kind of sort of speak.
So Jasmine, what kind of related services do you think your children need more? How old are they? Boy and a girl, how old?
Yeah, my son, he's 7, and my daughter, she is 11.
11. And do
So
they receive related services now?
they do receive some, like my daughter gets the related after school services. She gets, testing accommodations and things like that. Excuse me. My daughter is more so, she's inattentive. So she's more of that area. Her behavior is not a problem. More so my son's behavior is the problem. So it's kind of like the opposite with my two. Very different situations. But I was really inquiring about getting the special support animal. How do
Oh,
I get that added on, or what do I need to do to get it's supposed to be like a special something for the kids
right.
for their
Sure.
IEP. I
Right.
don't want them to take it to school or anything like that, but I need it for home.
So I would talk to, do either one of your children see a counselor outside of school?
Yeah, they both get therapy.
Okay.
And
So that's the beginning. That would be the first step. So they're both still young enough to have a pediatrician. So I would talk to the pediatrician. I would
Okay.
talk to the counselor. And if both of them feel that that's something that's helpful, I don't know where you are in the world, but it's entirely possible that there are a number of organizations community-based organizations that with both a mental health professional and a medical health professional saying that your children would benefit from having a support animal. I apologize for that. Then those agencies might be able to help you with that. Because I know that when I looked into having a support animal, it was like $17,000, and that's just more than I have available to me. And
Right.
so I went to agencies, and then we got a family pet anyway. So
Right. I mean, well, we have a pet, but I just want to make sure that
there's a
if I
difference
need,
between a pet and an animal that's trained to be an assistance.
right, exactly. So therefore, that's what I was inquiring about. So okay, I'd have to talk to the pediatrician and the
And their
therapy.
counselors. Absolutely.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And then I'm sure that there are service animal trainers. There are special organizations that do those kinds of things. And my understanding is that then you would talk to that agency, and they would observe your children, and they would help decide the very best way to train a dog or whatever animal you have in mind. It's most often a service dog. And then that training would take place, and you would have the service animal. And that's where the community agencies come into play, because it really is a large expense. And so there are agencies in communities who help families with that expense. And so that would take a little research on your part.
Yeah.
Or the agency who trains the dog may know of those kinds of supports in the community that you could go to and speak to about being able to raise some money in that regard.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good.
I've also known churches that have supported congregants who decide that that's a need too. So it, being creative about where to raise those kinds of funds is always a good idea too.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I'm in New York. Sorry.
I could tell. I'm from New York.
Yeah, I'm not from New York, but I live in New York. I'm from
There you go.
actually North Carolina, but I
Yep.
just live in New York.
That's
So,
great.
But yes. So the mainly I'm here to get information and listen to everybody else as well to see
That's
what
terrific.
different. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jasmine, for being here. I appreciate you being willing to attend, and I hope that you find some good information that will help you with your son and your daughter.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jasmine. Now, Dr. Jean, I'm going to put the ball in your court. We have a couple questions that were submitted prior to the event we're going to cover, but I know that you had a couple things that or additional point you wanted to talk to Myra about. So you tell me what you would like to do and we'll go from there.
Well, if Myra can come back on and give me a little clarity around the relationship with the principal, then I may have some different advice about how she should proceed. Because if there's an adversarial relationship already in progress, then that's not a terrific thing, is it, Myra?
Oh no, I had an issue with her when I went to pick up my son. The first time I had an issue with her, I went to pick up my son to school, and I told her that I came to pick up Ivan, and she was like, "Can I see your ID?" And I gave her I told her, "You already know me," because she's always calling me. She's like, "It's protocol." I said, "Okay." I gave her my ID, and then my reaction was, when she verified that it was me, my reaction was to go inside the school. I grabbed the door of the school to go inside, and she yelled at me, and she said, "Get your hand off the door." So when she screamed at me, I kind of was like in shock, and I'm like, "Did she just scream at me?" So I just let go of the door, and then I'm like, and then she closed the door, and then when she went inside the school, my reaction, like outside the school, I was like, "What the hell? Did she just scream at me?" I was like talking to myself, right? And then she came right out, and she was like, with her finger, she was like, "Today is not the day to talk to me like that. Today is not the day." And I'm like, "What is your problem?" So I just ignore her. And she made me wait like 20 minutes to get my son. So I called the school again, and the girl that answered the phone, I told her, did you hear the principal how she spoke to me? She was like, "Don't," she told me in Spanish, "Don't, no digas nada." She told me to put you on speaker. I told her, "Okay, I'll just wait for my son outside." So that was the first time I had an issue with the principal. I did a complaint to the Compton district, and they did their investigation, and the response that I got was that it's a site matter, that I should fix it at school. But then I'm like, how am I going to fix it at school if the problem that I have with the principal? That was the first time I had an issue with her. And then the second time, I, like, my son, he can't stay still. He gets out of the class. They remove him from the class. So I did. I guess they keep telling the principal that he's like not listening and stuff like that. So she grabbed my son and she told him, like, "Ivan," and then he was not listening to her, and she screamed at my son. So my son is scared of her, and she told him, "Is something wrong with your head?" You know. And then I did a complaint also about that. And I told him she shouldn't be telling my son that she knows that he has ADHD, you know. And then so the next day, the next morning, my son woke up scared, thinking that something's wrong with his head, that he's gonna be removed from the school. Like, she like traumatized them, you know. And I did so many complaints to the Compton human HR department, and I don't get a response back. So I feel like defeated, you know. I'm like, I speak English, I'm trying to advocate for my son, and you guys not listening. That's why, like, Hispanic parents don't speak up, because if you're not listening to me, that I'm able to advocate for my son, imagine how the other Hispanic parents feel. So I have like it's called Hopes for Family. It's a lawyer that helps families to get the education that their kids need, and the lawyer's helping me like advocate for Ivan. But so far, I guess he's going back and forth with the district, because I'm trying to get at him at one-on-one, you know. And they were the response that the district gave me was that they wanted to send him to a special education school. But I told him I don't think that's gonna be appropriate, because he's not gonna. I don't know if I'm right. I don't feel he's gonna learn as a regular kid if he's placed in a special education class and they're trying to send them like an hour away from my house. And like I'm like, that's too much time. And then the school where he attends now is basically like a minute away, you know? So right now I'm like, I don't know, I don't know what to do.
So I have some ideas, Myra.
Okay.
So one of my ideas is that the federal law says a free, appropriate public education. It's FAPE, FAPE. That's what we call it, free and appropriate public education. And that means that your son is entitled to the least restrictive environment. So he has a right to be in a regular classroom with support
Yes.
because that's the least restrictive environment. So you're headed in the right direction. So good for you for advocating. And as for Hispanic parents having more difficulty trying to advocate for their children, I absolutely have some idea of that because my next door neighbor is an interpreter for Hispanic families in the district. And we have had so many driveway conversations about the district and how difficult it is for Hispanic families to understand and advocate and have their children's needs met the way that their children deserve to have their needs met. So from that perspective, I certainly can identify with what you're saying. It's not the first time that I've heard it, and it's not the first time I've experienced it as an advocate. Clearly, I don't have that problem because I'm not brown, but it doesn't mean that I don't hear it. And even though I can't experience it from my life and my place in life, I certainly have worked with families who do. And so it's real and I get it. And I'm sorry that you have to do that. 7 years old, Jasmine. And so the first thing that I would do, hats off, you're a fantastic mom, Myra. You need to know that. Your child is 7 years old and you're right there. You're trying to make sure his needs are met. You have found an attorney who can help you. I think that that's fantastic. So one of the things that your attorney might explore for you is the step before we do what's called due process, where you take the school to court, which, avoid that at all costs, because that really messes up a relationship long-term with the school. There's a process called mediation. And in a mediation, I'm a trained mediator. And so it's a fantastic process. There are no court costs because it's free to both parties. It's usually paid for by the state education department in whatever state you're in. And that allows you to sit down with somebody who's trained and you have your time to say, and here are the things that are bothering me today. And the district gets to say, and here are the things that are bothering me today. And then everybody leaves the room and the mediator brings one side in and says, okay, now tell me your story in your words. And then the other people get to, and then you've reached what's called a good faith agreement. And you in good faith say, I will do these things to support my son in the school. And the school says, these are the things we will do to support her son in the school. And hopefully that brings people together in a way that's much more collaborative, less adversarial, and helps all the parties involved, because a due process hearing is something that is much more court-like and there are costs involved. And so hopefully you don't need to go that far, but if things need to escalate, then that's the step before you have to involve really big attorneys and costs. In the meantime, here's a scary thought for you. Are you ready?
Yes.
You're not going to like this, Myra, but it's my strong suggestion. Are you ready? Thomas will tell you, I'm not afraid to say things that you may not like.
Okay.
What if you are the big girl here and you go to the principal and say, let's have a cup of coffee and just fix this, right? Maybe you were having a bad day, but the way that you spoke to me really made me feel, and then fill in the blanks, made me feel angry, made me feel dismissed, made me feel whatever those were, right? And then, and the way that you spoke to my son, but you know, it's that same thing, Myra. can you put the emotion over here and just deal with the facts, right? Can you present
Yeah.
them in a way that this is, I understand that you may have had a bad day, but this is how that made me feel. And I think that you need to know that. And this is how you
Okay.
made my son feel. And I think you need to know that. And now that I've said that, can we start fresh? There's the hard
Okay.
part, right?
Yeah.
And you can say, I'm willing to set that aside. My son has some needs and I'm hoping that you can help me, right?
Yes.
So it's put all that emotion over here for just a minute, because I'm not saying you shouldn't feel it. What she has done from what you're describing is
Yeah.
not the greatest behavior for a principal at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Because my son has to mention to me that when he wants to go to the bathroom or something, he just sees her. He just holds it, or he just waits because he feels scared by her because she's a big girl, you know? I say, you
Mm.
shouldn't be scared. And then he tells me, Mommy, I'm not going to tell you nothing no more. Like when they do things to me because you're going to go complain. I'm like, no, you have to let me know, you know?
Yeah, it's his right to be comfortable at school. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
he's really little. So where I was talking to you about that whole where he is developmentally, for him, it's still really black and white. And so if this person who's supposed to be in a position of authority is
Yes.
saying things that make him feel bad, then that's how he perceives it, that he is bad.
Right.
And so
Yes.
he's not going to be able to understand that until he moves into the next developmental stage where he can say, well, maybe she was having a bad day, or maybe she doesn't understand and I can tell her this and this. But until he's there developmentally, he's not going to be able to do that. And so for him, the things she's saying are real because that's where he is developmentally. And so super sorry that you're going through that. But my advice would be the big girl, fix it.
Yes.
Right? That's a really hard thing to do, Myra, but I feel your power. You are strong in where you stand, and I think that you can do that, and it might work. It might fix it. It might make her a better person in terms of being a principal of a school where she's giving really mixed messages to families.
Yes.
And maybe she doesn't know. Maybe she needs to have that kind of insight from somebody who has the courage and the personal power to do that in a way.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thanks so much, Myra.
Now, Dr. Jean, Dr. Jean, I want to kind of piggyback off on that because I think that's great advice, right? Be the bigger person, be the better person, and just start fresh, or, extend that olive branch.
Yeah.
However, unfortunately, we live in a world where sometimes that olive branch is not taken. Sometimes it's batted away. One of the things that you talk about is having, advocates, or having people who can advocate for the advocate. So speak a little bit about when that becomes something that's necessary, or because not many people know that you can actually have an advocate for the advocate. Talk about when that's necessary, when it's appropriate, and the benefits of doing so.
So the whole advocate for an advocate came up because I am a parent advocate, and there were difficulties when my son was in school and I was going through IEP meetings, and I'm not a perfect parent either. And, there are times when personalities clash because, being a fiercely independent woman who is not afraid to speak her mind is not always welcomed in school settings. And so, the advocate for the advocate was a friend of mine who said, and who's going to help you? And so I think that my sense is that Jasmine and Myra are strong women who understand that they're their child's best advocate. But I would say that you have to have a really good support system outside of the school. And so I have a circle of friends who are also autism moms. And I have a circle of friends who get it. When I need to vent about something, I go over here and I vent it over here. I don't vent it in the school because the school, having worked in schools for a really long time, schools are a rumor mill, all sorts of gossip. And so I just don't do that. And some of that is, it's just good practice, right? And so everybody can say anything that they want, but if you say it over here in this setting and somebody else hears it, then it runs the risk of being everywhere in that setting. And if it's something you don't really want everyone in that setting to hear, then know that and take it to a single person that you trust. And that's the advocate for the advocate. The other thing that I will say is there were times when I really felt like it would be good to have another person with me at a meeting, because I get emotional just like any other parent does. Just because it says Dr. Jean doesn't mean that I can always leave my emotions at the door and be able to handle a situation without feeling really strongly, either strongly positive, strongly negative, whatever it is. And so having someone alongside means that when I'm feeling something strongly, then this person can say, hey, you know what? We just need a 2-minute break so that we can step out, get our heads back together and come back in. And that's super important. I have seen that work for other parents, and it's really powerful to know that that's what you need. So that's one of those are two separate things, right? So that's how I would address that.
So just to clarify, there are times, or explain a little bit more about, you can have additional people in some of those meetings.
You can have additional people in any meeting.
Because I think some people feel like that they're not allowed to do that, but and especially in Myra's case, where there's an investigation involved, could that be a helpful way to bring all the parties towards a resolution?
It might.
Having additional people there to focus it that way might work. I think Jasmine wanted to ask a question. So Jasmine, if you wanted to unmute, you're raising your finger there, so it sounds like you want to make a point and have a question. Go ahead.
We're ready.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was looking for the raise hand thing, but
That's all right. It worked.
You did it
anyway.
the old-fashioned way. That's good.
Yeah, I did. I did. Yeah, I was gonna say absolutely, because even with my son, I've been through. I think I've had to do the most advocating for him. And like she said, her son's 7, my son's 7 too, and he goes to charter school. So it's definitely been a different type of ball game than my daughter, because she goes to public school. Charter school is a little bit more stricter. And I feel like at one point in time, I wasn't getting, you know what I mean? Because even though my son has IEP services, he's still not, it's not consistent for me. So I'm having to do a lot of advocating for him, because he has a para, he has therapy he's supposed to be getting. He has where he gets breaks and things of that sort, but it's not consistent. So I've had to do a lot of advocating for him. And like you said, having the support, because I've had his therapist on the line. I mean, at the conference, I've had their care manager and their social worker. They've all been in the loop, because without them, like, I have everybody on the same page. That's very important when you're advocating for your child, to have everybody on the same page, because if not, everybody's going to be all over the place. So I had to learn that as well. And then it actually smoothed over better, where my support system started advocating for me, like calling the school themselves and is he getting this or he's getting that, or can we have a conference, how's his grades looking and stuff like that. So it does take a lot of work on our part as parents, which is the best thing. But like you said, leave your attitude at the door, because there were times where I was like, you know what I mean? Like, really had to hold it in. But then, at the end of the day, when you sit down and observe and look at things, you can kind of figure it out and get the support that you need. So it's a good thing that she's here. I almost was at an investigation because of the fact that my son wasn't getting what he needed. So my worker reached out to a legal service, and she just gave me some ideas, as far as maybe it's not the right school for him. I got a couple of things that was said to me, but at the end of the day, for me advocating for him, it puts him I don't want him to feel, like she said, I don't want him to feel like he's not able to be in the classroom like other students. Because at one point in time, they had my son sitting in the back of the classroom because of his behavior. And I was upset about that, being the color that we are, not saying it like that, but like he was a problem child. And it's like, I know he's not the only one, but he just learns things differently. He handles things differently. So advocating for him in that way and telling him simply how that child is, it helped out a lot too. So with her going to the principal, I think that would be good too. And then, like you said, sometimes it's not. Um, what about when you don't have, you know what I mean? An advocate for advocate or something like that. You were saying,
Yeah.
Thomas, you were saying something like that. So,
Mhm.
you know, times when you don't have that, what are some scenarios? So,
So
I mean,
Well,
I
Dr.
have a
Jean has
couple
an
of
answer for
ideas
that.
about that. Yep,
yeah,
I do. I have a couple of ideas about that, Jasmine. So there are local agencies. I don't know what they would be called where you are, but I know that there are local agencies who have lists of parent advocates. And so you can contact them and they can advise you about and give you a list of people in your area who act as parent advocates. And so that's one idea. I
okay,
certainly have been in meetings where their parents have the grandparents there. So who spends the most time with the children, right? So if the parents are working parents and that their child is with an auntie or a grandmother or a grandfather or a neighbor. So who knows that child well enough to be right beside you and say, this is what we're seeing at home, or this is what my child is saying when he or she
right,
comes home from school, right? And so it doesn't matter who it is. Like you said, you can have the community-based counselor. You can have, my son attends some special programs that have supported us since we moved here to Illinois. And so they have volunteered to be in his meetings because he spends a lot of time within that agency and there are people there who know him really well. So the idea is to have people on your side,
right,
physically on your side. Because I don't know if you ladies have noticed this, but very often the school is on one side and the parent is alone on the other, right?
yeah, because
Literally alone on
at,
the other. And
at one
so,
other
yeah. And so
another
having
thing,
somebody, sit beside you gives you at least a little bit of comfort that you're not being thrown into the wolves, right? That you have somebody on your side. And that's what I've done. I've gone in and, then they do the introductions around the table. I'm so and so, I'm so, I'm so, I'm so and so, and here's my title, and here's my title, and here's my title. And here I am. I'm Jean. I'm the mom.
yeah,
But when I go in as the advocate, whoever's there says, I'm so and so, I'm the mom. And then I get to say, and I'm Dr. Jean Hess. I'm the parent advocate. There is quiet in the room.
that happened to me.
Yeah.
When
Right.
because something was going down with my son, and I called um their care manager. I told her, can she meet me at the school? And she came, and they didn't think I had anybody with me. They just thought I was coming along, and they were going to try to, like, talk over me and all of this kind of stuff. And I'm like, luckily she was there to, do it in a professional way. We handle it professionally. So
Right.
that does help when you have
Mhm.
somebody to support you.
It does.
I
It
learned
does.
that the support system is the best thing to have, like
It's
people
really
in your corner.
critical.
Hmm.
Mhm. So the other thing I think you guys have probably noticed is that being the parent of a child with special needs is a full-time job on top of your full-time job, right? Because you have to, you both have said, you've got people who help you and support you. So there may be outside support services, there may be, they need to be to this specialist and that specialist, and they have this event going on and there are behaviors involved, and that takes you away from whatever you're trying to do. And if you've got more than one child, bless you, Jasmine, you have two with special needs. Myra, I don't know if you have others. I only have one, but it has been enough, trust me. So, parenting becomes a full-time job on top of whatever else you're doing. And so I think that the school doesn't understand that either. I know I didn't when I was a teacher. I honestly thought when I was teaching that I was kind and compassionate and that I tried to be as understanding as I possibly could be. I had the child for 8 hours a day, so I must know him pretty well. And so that's the position I came from. I figured I was spot on with my conversations with families. And it wasn't until I'm the parent of a child with special needs that I said to myself, I wish I could go back to every single family I ever worked with, and I was a teacher for a while, and say, I am so sorry. I had no idea, and I am so sorry that I tried. I said that I understand, and I really didn't at all. And so that's a message that I try really hard to help school people understand. You think you understand, but unless you have a child with special needs, you don't get it. And if you do have a child with special needs, you understand your path because it's your path. But I don't completely understand the path of either you, Jasmine, or you, Myra, because it's not my path, it's your path. And so I'm really a very big proponent of let's stay in our own lane and talk about what we understand on our own journey and try to help other people understand the best we can. And the best way to do that is to advocate for our own. So my hat's off to both of you for being really strong women who are willing to advocate for your children.
One more question from me. For the IEP services, like, both my kids get the transportation on their IEPs, but do they have where you can get transportation like during the summer?
Yes.
They do? Because
Yes.
I think, well, my kids probably will be doing the summer rising program, but I'm not sure if they offer transportation. So is
So
there something?
if your child has an extended school year, that's what it's called on the IEP. If they are approved for an extended school year, then transportation should be provided because it's an extended school year and it's free and appropriate public education.
Okay, so my son has 12 months and my daughter has 10 months. So will I have to ask for it for my daughter? Probably for her.
Yes. So
Okay.
if she has an IEP meeting coming up, they often do at the end of the school year, then you ask whether or not she is eligible. These are the words, is she eligible for an extended school year? And the criteria for being eligible for extended school year are these. You have to make a determination about whether or not the student with disabilities is going to regress more than 6 weeks without schooling. So in other words, when they go back to school, you're in New York, so they go back to school the Wednesday after Labor Day. And so is it going to take them until Columbus Day to catch up to where they were? If it's going to take more than Columbus Day for them to catch up to where they were at the end of the previous school year, then they would probably benefit from having an extended school year. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay.
So the need for an extended school year is determined by whether or not how much they will remember when they go back to school. And if they're not going to remember, then they get an extended school year. And the purpose of extended school year is not to teach new material, but to maintain where they are so that when they go back to that next grade, then they're right where they were and they can begin right there at the beginning and they don't have to relearn the material that they had the year before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because she just had it like back in February, March. I think it was March. She just had hers in March, but and they extended it all the way till she goes to middle school, 6th grade. So it'll be next year sometime.
So her IEP is this. So a year from now, she'll be in 6th grade. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and they
Exactly.
just extended
That's the annual meeting. But as I said before, that doesn't mean that you can't ask for a meeting. It means that that's when they'll go over her annual progress. But if you want to have a meeting before then, contact the principal and you say, I'd like to have an IEP meeting about my daughter. And that starts the clock. They have 10 days to have it on the calendar.
Okay. Okay, good information.
Business days, not calendar days.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we're getting towards the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Here are your potential next steps. Obviously, these challenges and the situations that we face with our special ones, continue throughout their lives. And so there's always going to be an evolution of the conversation, right? There's, as the child develops, as the child gets older, there's always going to be new topics. There's going to be new questions that parents are going to have. The good news is that Dr. Jean is available. If you go to, if at any time you go to askdrjean.com, you can book a time to call with her. And Dr. Jean does offer highly specialized advocacy services that are kind of on that continuum of, you know, people you can work with in terms of as a family members, as a local resources. Dr. Jean is in that perfect position because not only is she a parent of someone of Alex, but also has the educational background to help people navigate. So if you ever feel like you're just stuck or need that extra oomph, Dr. Jean is available as an advocate and provides those services for folks. So again, go to askdrjean.com. I believe we have everyone's email address here. I'll be happy to add you to our list and let you know of these sessions. Dr. Jean, we've got about 5 minutes left, and I know you like to keep everyone on a tight schedule. So your final thoughts for today, and then we'll go ahead and break the call.
I am so excited that I had a chance to meet you, Jasmine, and you, Myra. You brought fantastic questions, and I'm super psyched to know that there are other fiercely independent women out there who are advocating for their children. And I think that the steps that you are taking so far are really, really good ones. And I hope that the suggestions that I made today will help you continue to be the very best advocates that you can be for your special people. And that if I can be of more help, then I can absolutely welcome you back. And if you need to have more information from me personally or privately, then by all means reach out and we'll do a quick call and we'll see if I can be of any further service.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you, Dr. Jean. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Myra. And we will have this recording available on Dr. Jean's social platforms, hopefully in the next couple of days. She'll have access to that as well, too. Thank you, Dr. Jean. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and end the call, and we will see you all in the near future.
Thanks so much.
Bye. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.